Night throbbed something more sinister, deeper, and much more terrifying than anyone could have imagined. Expected. The city was lighted by neon signs and streetlights. Beneath the shine, though, there were already whispers that by sunrise would be a popular news sensation. Tamar Braxton had been brought to the hospital with a shattered face, missing teeth, and a trembling voice. Admitted that she was on the verge of death. This was more than just another fan rumor. Once believed to be untouchable, the woman in the shocking photo is now damaged, injured, and chained to unexpected identities. Yandy Smith, Harris, Mendez, Funky Dineva, and The Shadow. In Atlanta, cousin Kesha will always be remembered. The evening had begun in harmless glory on the surface. Tamar Braxton was sitting across from her longtime friend Funky Dineva at Ruth's Chris Steakhouse, glowing with confidence and smiles. The short Instagram snippets that circulated online gave the impression that the table was a celebration of friendship, replete with clinking glasses, polished laughter, and cheerful conversation. But Atlanta is more conscious. In this city, perfection never stays perfect. A giggle may hide a struggle, and a glass of wine can start a blood on the sidewalk. A supper that seemed like a get-together turned out to be the beginning of a night that would go out of hand. Into chaos, allowing fans to examine every action frame by frame. After dinner, Tamar Braxton and Funky Dineva crept into the already popular V12 lounge. Pulsing with a booming bass and flashing lights, there was a sudden shift in temperature. Mendeecees Harris stood inside, leaning back in his usual smug silence. He was only waiting for a spark, like gasoline. For years, whispers have swirled around his name: betrayals, infidelity, and cheating. His methodology hasn't changed, though. Keep quiet. Allow the storm to envelop him. Let women bear the burden of the drama. Let the blogs rage while he stays still. Silence would not be enough this time either, as witnesses said Tamar Braxton and Mendeecees Harris were too close that night. They moved closer, their heads almost touching, their hands just brushing, their voices quiet. It didn't work. It wasn't casual. It was dangerous. In Atlanta, danger also has a way of drawing attention. When Mendeecees Harris, Yandy Smith, invariably follows. And when she stepped inside that lounge, the air altered once more, this time with an oppressive weight. A shouter is not Yandy Smith. She doesn't leap forward. Regarding theatricality, she doesn't overdo. Her weapon has always been silence. Quiet, precise, sharp, strategic. However, that silence was more forceful than 100 yells. Picture the scenario. Tamar Braxton laughed uncontrollably, enjoying the attention, as though she should have been sitting so close to Mendeecees Harris. Then Yandy Smith walked in, clean and calm, but with a presence that was stronger than a shout. The sound beneath her eyes was the buzzing of the silent threat, even if the music raged. Tension shattered the air like glass. Some claim that Tamar Braxton smiled first, as if it didn't matter. Some think Yandy Smith came straight up to her, ready to regain her territory with a single look. In any case, the clash was inevitable. Witnesses recalled Tamar Braxton giving a caustic, "You got a problem?" shout through the dense bass line. "Do I?" Yandy Smith shot back, her tone even, her phrases serene, her eyes piercing with the might of swords. Every phone rang and every drink on the table froze. Atlanta cutting was imminent and everyone in the room knew it, adding to its turbulent history with yet another controversy. What about Mendeecees Harris? As befitted his character, he reclined back and said nothing. It has always served as a protection for him. Let the women burn one another while he remains untouchable. One of those guys who survive chaos by pretending you're not there. But that night, his silence did not protect him. It condemned him. Since Tamar Braxton isn't a quiet person, she started to shout more and throw shade like darts. "You think you have him?" Witnesses said that when she roared, her eyes blazed. Yandy Smith, ever the strategist, used her silence to speak louder than words. The amount of tension was unbearable. The electricity in that room was ready to blow up. And suddenly, there was the spark. They said a glass flew. According to another, Tamar Braxton smashed one down with such force that the table was covered in liquid spray. There are many who maintain that Yandy Smith ignored it. Whatever happened, chaos followed. There were voices, and the crowd rushed in, and in the mist of lights, one name ripped through the air like thunder: Kesha's relative. For some, it could have been a coincidence, but for Atlanta, it was proof. The tendency was known to the fans. After completing her assignment, cousin Kesha came out when Yandy Smith needed the unclean. She has gained notoriety ever since she lunged at Samantha, the mother of love and hip-hop, during their reunion. Viewers keep returning to Mendeecees Harris's child. Rumors swirled that she was at the lounge, and witnesses muttered about her body. While managing the uncertainty, the tale was locked. It didn't matter if there was proof. When you are well known, in Atlanta, you don't need proof. And cousin Kesha's reputation was enough. There are others who say they saw her swing. She shoved, according to some. There was no camera footage of it. It was not supported by a screenshot. But the story didn't need to be verified. It was her the streets claimed when they talked. That in itself converted a turbulent confrontation into a tragic one. Funky Dineva was also present, and while some insist that he already had that knowing smirk on his face, preparing his account of the event, others assert that he attempted to extinguish the fire. No matter where he stood, the result was the same. Tamar Braxton eventually let out a scream after being dragged past flashing security. Lights. Yandy Smith looks beautiful yet angry. Mendeecees Harris was unreadable, and Funky Dineva was caught in the corner between a pundit and a friend. The images burned themselves into memory, too hot to ignore. Hashtags started to appear when Tamar Braxton hurried out of the V12 club. Tamar vs. Yandy Mendeecees controversy on Clash ATV 12. Before she ever got home, TikTok alterations ruined timelines. On Instagram, there was a lot of speculation. When it comes to theories, Twitter is brutal, but nobody had any idea what would come next. Tamar Braxton's remarks shocked the internet a few hours later. I almost died. I woke up in a pool of blood. My nose broke. My teeth are gone. My memories are gone. The post wasn't just a post, they were a confession of dread. All at once, the bold, unfiltered admirers of Tamar Braxton became silent. Her might was consumed by shock. The city became chilly. The blogs ceased to publish. Even her critics froze. No longer was this enjoyment. Blood was involved. Tamar Braxton was drawn to more than just drama. She was dragged into the hospital. And the timing was too sharp and precise to be dismissed as a coincidence. She got into a brawl with Yandy Smith. Her seat was uncomfortably close to Mendeecees Harris's. Funky Dineva accompanied her. Then broken, she woke up. Silence marked by fate, accident, or revenge. Because in Atlanta, silence is never empty. Yandy Smith's calm is her strongest chessboard approach. The secret to Mendeecees Harris's survival is his silence. One method is camouflage. In addition, Tamar Braxton, who has never been a silent person, suddenly stopped talking. That silence couldn't have been broken by a cry. Her broken and bleeding look wasn't written off as an accident by the internet. It was called retribution. And the shadow of cousin Kesha was clearly seen once more. The street spoke. The hashtag yelled, and the participants' silence was more powerful than words. All the while, one face kept appearing in the middle: Funky Dineva. The man had been in the car, in the lounge, at the meal. The man who may have clarified the misunderstanding. The man who had the chance to keep his friends safe. But when it did happen, he didn't appear shocked. His voice was unfazed. He laughed. He turned the narrative into a comedy and the blood into a jest, making himself the star of a tragedy that wasn't his. Instead, supporters turned against him and joined in his laughter. They shouted, "How can you joke?" When Tamar Braxton disclosed that she had almost died, but Funky Dineva wasn't done yet. In one of his own videos, he revealed something disturbing. Tamar. He received an SMS from Braxton the morning after the fight. There was something unnerving about her comments. 4 of my teeth are gone. Are you acquainted with a dentist? 4 teeth fell out in one night. Additionally, Funky Dineva smiled and used it as gratification instead of rushing to her rescue, calling the police, or even just making an offer. Fans didn't find it hilarious. It was betrayal. As the internet ripped him to pieces, there was yet another uninterrupted and unnerving silence. Mendeecees Harris was silent. If Mendes Harris had nothing to hide, fans wondered why he stayed silent as the internet as a whole sought answers. Why didn't he step in to protect? Should he defend Tamar Braxton, defend Yandy Smith, or clear his own name? His quiet was not interpreted as a show of power this time. It was seen as guilt. The quiet that had appeared like a ploy suddenly seemed like a confession, and patterns can be harmful in this way. When you've built a reputation for being quiet while ladies are flaming around you, people don't wait for proof. They believe that silence is the truth, and that's exactly what happened. Fans filled in the spaces. For him, they wrote his contribution to the dispute without seeking his input. Deciding that he was too comfortable and close to Tamar Braxton that night, leaving Yandy Smith to do the heavy work and being too focused on getting by to speak. Yandy Smith, on the other hand, carried out her duties like a skilled strategist would. While blogs were spinning various versions of events, hashtags were trending, and the internet was boiling, she created perfection online. Images of the family, commercials, steadfast smiles, and calm captions. To her adversaries, it was further proof of guilt, but to her fans, it showed that she was unaffected. That's her pattern, they wrote. She never screams, she never loses her temper. She lets the streets speak for themselves and lets her cousin's reputation do the talking. Tamar Braxton was the only one who encouraged her to forget to mention the fire. She appeared to want the silence to play for her, even though she was fully aware that the internet would assume she was a relative. Kesha had pulled up again, and the name Cousin Kesha was louder than anything else. She kept everything to herself. She didn't say that. She didn't try to deny. She didn't have to. It was her reputation that brought her there. Alone. And because of that reputation alone, every fan theory turns into a reality. At the reunion, they recalled the altercation. They remembered her lunging over couches and rushing past security. They remembered how Yandy Smith never raised her fists and always had Kesha by her side. When Tamar Braxton woke up bleeding, toothless, and beaten, no one inquired as to whether Kesha was there. They simply concluded that she was. Artists on TikTok replicated her shadow entering the club. Instagram fan sites were overrun with memes that made a rumor become reality, while Twitter users shared pictures of Yandy Smith along with warnings like, "Don't touch her man unless you're ready to see Kesha." Funky Dineva made things worse all the time. Rather than retreat or show fear, he became more humorous. His sarcasm. His wanted poster depicting himself as the suspect infuriated many. They didn't chuckle. They were disgusted. Tamar Braxton suffered. More than just bruises. She was hospitalized, losing teeth, and openly admitted to having almost died. Which friend is now cracking jokes? His fans didn't find his humor amusing. It was cover-up of energy. The most incriminating proof was his own words that morning. When Tamar Braxton woke up, she admitted via text that she had lost 4 teeth. It wasn't a joke. It wasn't a skit. It was her whole universe. Additionally, Funky Dineva's decision to treat it as entertainment destroyed what little trust people still had in him. That was hardly the only outrage. Bloggers did more research. Some claim that Funky Dineva's unwillingness to take her illness seriously went beyond his own brand. He was shielding Harris from Mendeecees, they believed. Others said he was posing as Yandy Smith, since he was equally accountable for being there at all times that evening. Some even suggested that he was protecting himself. After all, he was dining with Tamar Braxton. They went inside V12 Lounge together, him with her. Along with her, he rode home. The only person who could explain her pain was him. But instead of offering answers, he cracked jokes. It was the only reason he looked suspicious. Additionally, fans began to make unexpected links between the actors. They remembered how Mendy's character, Harris, had a tendency to let women take the brunt of scandals while remaining unaffected. They pointed out that Yandy Smith's brand relied heavily on deflection and silence. They recalled that Cousin Kesha's name was the first to be spoken when times became hard. Physical. In addition, Funky Dineva's laughter now matches the puzzle. Too well. Every element worked together like a script that didn't need the approval of any participants. The streets had already decided. Tamar Braxton approached Harris's Mendy too closely. Yandy Smith gained knowledge. Funky Dineva turned the situation into a circus when Cousin Kesha showed up. The impact was more than just gossip. It was cultural. TikTok creators did more than just recreate the night. They made it into a series of clips. Tamar Braxton falters under the glaring light. Across the room, Yandy Smith was frowning. Men's Harris sat silently in the corner. The cousin Kesha, dashing amid the chaos and craziness, Dineva's laughter in the background. On Instagram, memes are more popular than the real thing. Yandy was featured in a post that went viral. Smith's expression as he says, "She gets rid of mistresses, not fights with them." Another picture showed a bruised Tamar Braxton with the name Kesha written in a shadowy silhouette. The text states, "She pulled up." End of story. As usual, Twitter was brutal. A number of people begged for pity by saying, "No woman deserves to wake up broken," accused Tamar Braxton of having an affair with a married man and being reckless, messy, and foolish. But in all the noise, one reality stood out, deeper than anything else. The streets said this wasn't an accident. They weren't even calling for a fight. The term retaliation was used, and the longer Tamar Braxton said nothing, the stronger that tale became. Because her admirers are accustomed to her clapping back. She blogs about her life, her tantrums, and her inability to allow anybody to criticize her, so they are used to it. However, nothing this time. One message, bleeding, then a heavy, strained, unnatural silence, and the claim that she had been forced to keep quiet, either out of fear, intimidation, or worse, was reinforced by that silence. Meanwhile, media insiders and production companies spoke behind closed doors. For a drama-based company, this was too violent, too real, and too severe to be presented as content without response. However, it was not seen as a spectacle by fans. They thought it was a cover-up. It also spread much more broadly as a result. Because when people believe that the cast is dangerous in real life and unpleasant on TV, every news item turns into a warning. By the middle of the week, Atlanta had ceased muttering. In addition to hip-hop and romance, the story had made its way to gossip blogs throughout the nation. Additionally, all versions shared the same four names: Yandy Smith, Tamar Braxton, Mendeecees Harris, and cousin Kesha. The internet itself wrote the verdict. Instead than detracting from the narrative, the cast's public silence enriched it, because in a city where silence is a tactic, the streets constantly fill up the blanks. The more Tamar Braxton remained silent, the more it became the story. Fans no longer had to wait for receipts. They had already produced their own. Every fan, edit, blog, and gossip website repeated the same narrative. Tamar Braxton crossed a line with Mendeecees Harris, and Yandy Smith saw it. Kesha, the cousin, was in charge of it. After that, Funky Dineva made it into a show. Their silence did not protect any of the four. It was strengthening the theory. In Atlanta, choices are made by the streets when no one speaks. And this was no coincidence, since the streets had already decided. In the background, there were whispers circulating about what had really happened when Tamar Braxton left V12 Lounge. According to others, the last person she went home with was Funky Dineva, to witness her before she fainted. Others insisted that she wasn't home alone, that she was followed, and that a fight went on into the night. The outcome appeared certain, but the actual situation was unclear. She had lost 4 teeth, her face was damaged, and she was covered in blood by daylight. Her voice trembled with pain. And instead of moving forward with panic, Funky Dineva smiled. Mendeecees Harris chose to remain silent rather than offer an explanation. Rather than stand up for her, Yandy Smith exchanged well-groomed smiles. And instead of dismissing Kesha, the cousin said nothing. The deafening quiet allowed fans to craft a story that was far more poignant than any reunion broadcast. Might possibly yield. On TikTok, reenactments get darker and more detailed. As Tamar Braxton yelled into mirrors, the artist feigned waking up, complaining about missing teeth and putting cold. Evenings in Atlanta have a certain rhythm. But through this night throbbed something more sinister, deeper, and much more terrifying than anyone could have imagined. Expected. The city was lighted by neon signs and streetlights. Beneath the shine, though, there were already whispers that by sunrise would be a popular news sensation. Tamar Braxton had been brought to the hospital with a shattered face, missing teeth, and a trembling voice. admitted that she was on the verge of death. This was more than just another fan rumor. Once believed to be untouchable, the woman in the shocking photo is now damaged, injured, and chained to unexpected identities. Yandy Smith, Harris, Mendez, Funky Dineva, and The Shadow. In Atlanta, cousin Kesha will always be remembered.